Welcome and thanks for joining our webinar today, where we're excited to discuss how to leverage intelligent narratives with Arria for Power BI. And my name is Brian Zwalin. I manage customer success at Arria. I'll be your host for this event. So today's agenda, we'll kick off with a little context around who we are as individual professionals in an organization. We'll discuss our solution to empower your organization with actionable insights to facilitate faster decision-making. And we'll touch on our tech suite that shows you the various ways you can deploy our solution that truly scales. And then we'll jump into the live action demo in Power BI. And finally, we'll close out with some questions in Q&A. So first off, let me introduce my colleague, Douglas Kirk. Doug is our training and development specialist at Arria. He's working with us to develop the various success plan courses that are available to our customers. And you may have seen them in our Getting Started videos. You're going to quickly become familiar with him. Doug, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Brian, and welcome to everybody here.
Great. So now a little bit about Arria and the value that we aim to offer. So Arria NLG is a recognized global leader in natural language generation, or NLG. We specialize in extracting insights from complex data sources and communicating the knowledge that's learned through the natural language. Arria's research center is located on the campus of Scotland's University of Aberdeen, with our primary business office in the United States and regional offices worldwide. Our chief scientists, Dr. Ehud Reiter and Dr. Yaji Swapada, are two of the leading figures internationally in the NLG space. They mentor a team of 10 PhDs in artificial intelligence disciplines such as NLG and data science. And Arria NLG is an artificial intelligence technology replicates the human process of expertly analyzing and communicating insights about your data. So using our solution provides your organization with accurate, consistently excellent, non-biased commentary at machine speed and massive scale. In a recent Gartner report, they state that data storytelling helps decision makers engage with data and analytics by delivering insights in compelling forms that are readily consumed. And 75% of stories will be automatically generated through technologies like NLG. So the value that we bring to the organization is huge. Using Arria for BI, you deliver real, actionable insights derived from your dashboards instantly because there's no need for interpretation. You gain efficiencies through the automation of analysis and writing of reports and free up your valuable employees from doing those kinds of robotic tasks. And you achieve consistently excellent, non-biased commentary with the ability to scale and democratize your knowledge throughout the organization. In our out-of-the-box capabilities, you'll see a quick return on your investment. I work with our amazing customers and partners that invent all kinds of ways to harness the power of NLG. And this slide speaks from our customers on the value that they've realized using Arria NLG. So the BBC says in a one-click process, they were able to take raw data and automatically generate news stories at speed and scale. BNY Mellon significantly reduced the amount of time writing reports, freeing their valuable employees to have more time interacting with customers. And Ernst & Young provides more accurate and consistently excellent reports for their customers. If you head to our website by typing arria.com/everywhere, you'll find another list of use cases from customers and partners. And when you mouse over the tiles, their direct quotes will be available for your review. At Arria, we have a vision of NLG everywhere. In order for us to empower organizations to expand their use, we've developed several channels where NLG can be accessed. And it's all supported by Arria NLG Studio that sits on top of the stack. So for instance, if you're using our custom extension in a BI dashboard, whether it's Power BI like we're going to see today, or Tableau, TIBCO, Click, or MicroStrategy, your data flows from the dashboard through Studio, which then analyzes the data and it passes the commentary right back into the dashboard. In just a few moments, we're going to look at our intelligent narratives for BI, which gives you the ability to create narratives without code. You simply select a few dimensions and measures, click a few configuration buttons, and select what type of analysis you're interested in. We'll also look at Arria Answers that takes this a step further. So if you're looking to drill down even more than the provided narrative, you can simply type, or with our integration to Alexa, ask a question about your data, and it will return in natural language. And Studio is very accessible. This diagram shows our flexible architecture and our simplistic approach of connecting through RESTful APIs. So we can connect to any data source, as you see here on the left, The data passes through a secure channel through the API. We generate the narrative and pass the text back out to your presentation layer of choice. All right, so Doug, I've done enough chatting here. How about if you go ahead and show us what you've got for us today?
Okay, great. All right. Hopefully you can see my screen.
I see the web page with intelligent, and now I see your dashboard.
Excellent, great. Thank you very much. Okay, everything's set. Great. Okay, so you are now looking at an Arria dashboard that's built within Power BI. Power BI is installed locally on my machine, and these narratives can now be modified at will. You can also get these dashboards available on our website. So if you were to go to arria.com/apps, you would then see a link that would actually take you to these dashboards. So I'm going to point to that real quick. So arria.com/apps will then point to this URL, business-intelligence. Here's the dashboard that I'm going to be working with today. And then as you scroll down, you'll see other dashboards that are available for download as well. And this also kind of shows off the flexibility in terms of data. So we have a dashboard really geared toward human resources, a retail store, expenses. We have all sorts of different dashboards that you can take a look at. So we're not really focused on one type of business. We can do this with many types. And then, of course, once you go to arria.com, it would point to appsource.microsoft.com, and that is where you would actually download it and sign up. So that is where you can locate all of this. So let me switch back to the dashboard itself. Here we see a dashboard with several visualizations and several tabs at the bottom, which is typical of a Power BI dashboard. What sets this apart from other dashboards, of course, is the Arria NLG narrative that we see over to the right. It provides additional insights into the underlying data and has the ability to drill down dynamically to more specific information. It also provides filters, so you can filter the data set to provide insights into a filtered amount of data. Now, it's important to note that what we accomplish here is based on the type of reports that we can generate. So I'm clicking here into our documentation portal. And we're proud to announce that this is the first webinar where we are introducing Arria NLG apps which is version 3.1. So that kind of alludes to the fact that we are constantly improving and updating and providing more value to our customers. So we did have 6 reports, we now have 8. So this screen identifies all 8 reports, and they're really geared to really provide a narrative that our customers need. And through time, we would expect this list to get larger and larger. So these are the 8 reports that are available. So I'm going to switch back to the dashboard itself. This dashboard does a great job of really providing good examples of all 8 reports. So I'll be going through them. The first one that we see is actually a custom narrative. Now, when you work with a custom narrative, that means that it was built using Arria Studio. And that way you have complete control over every word that's in that narrative. And that of course, is something you can do as well. It would just contact one of your sales representatives and we can set you up with that. But this tab displays several charts with a custom narrative to the right that provides deeper understanding. The narrative provides analytics using several dimensions and measures for actual sales, variance by country between November 2018 and 19. I'm sorry, November and December 2018. And then as you scroll through the narrative, you're going to see that it then provides another report down at the bottom, actual sales results by country for December 2018 and only December 2018. But then it shows a trend analysis that identifies significant trend changes in actual sales. So all of this was generated using a custom narrative, and it really does a great job to provide insight into that underlying data. Now in here it mentions that Caradian, this is one of our products, was the main contributor. Now, what you can expect with our narratives is that if you want to dive down into the details on this particular product, we see it over on the left side. Just give that product a click, and that, of course, will filter on that one product. You can see the narrative has now updated, and this entire narrative now points to all the details, but only on Karadian. So before it was providing a narrative based on all products. Now we're looking at it for just that one product. It then analyzes it for each country and does the same down below, actual sales by country, and shows the trend, but for only that one product. So that's the interactive capability that you can expect when you work with something like this. Let's see. Let's move on to the next tab, and that is Analyze Sales Performance. Now we're looking at narratives that are built out of the box. No code required, not customized. You can build all of these basically within a couple of minutes, and there's no code required to build them. So on this tab, we see 3 charts across the top, and then 3 narratives down below. Basically, the goal here is that you want to create a narrative that provides insight into the chart that's above it. You don't have to do it that way, but we did it this way so we can really show off the different narrative types. So the first one that we see is what we call the descriptive statistics report. And it's basically complementing the tree map visualization that's up above. So if you know Power BI, you know that these are all the different visualization types. And this is what they call a tree map. And it's basically showing actual sales by market and product, showing that departmental is the market that has the majority of the actual sales, and then brand store and online and chemists are the smaller markets. So this narrative down below complements that by basically working with the same fields. You can see that when I click on this narrative over to the right, it's utilizing product, actual sales, market, and country to provide the insights into the back-end data. And when we talk about the back-end data, it's important to note that these charts are based on back-end data, and so is the narratives. So as I click on here, this is the data that is being analyzed. So every time you see a narrative that's built, it's looking to this back-end data. We can see it has 1,764 records. These are the fields, and here is where they are defined. So going back to the dashboard itself, always keep that in mind that these narratives, as Brian explained before, basically what they do is they read that data, build the narrative, and then display it here on the dashboard. And it's important to note that Arria never stores any of your data. It basically just takes the data, builds a narrative, passes it through to the dashboard, and when your session is ended, that cache is basically wiped clean. So that's pretty much how it works. It's building narrative. Next to it, we see another chart type. This is called a decomposition tree. And this is great to show basically a drill down effect. Here we're analyzing profit by quarter. And as you utilize this, I don't know if you've ever used this type of visualization before, but it'll drill down. So we're talking about profit. You would then drill down into quarter 1, and they would drill down into all the products. Well, this narrative pretty much tries to accomplish the same thing. This one is a time-based variance narrative that's built to complement a decomposition tree in this scenario. So this type of visual shows off the ability to drill down just like a time-based variance narrative can do. The narrative contrasts quarter 3 versus quarter 4 in 2019. So there's quarter 3 and quarter 4 right there, using 3 products to explain that variance. So as we look at how much profit was generated, it provides those details, and then within the details, it'll then dive down into Karadian, Routine, and Neutrali, which were the main contributors to that profit. And you have the ability to control how many of those that you want to display. So in the actual configuration of this narrative, we selected 3 as the number of contributors to list. Next to that, we see the third narrative, which is a target-based variance narrative. And this one's used to analyze the variance between two distinct measures, actual sales here versus target sales. And you can use an alias and just call it sales if you like. And this narrative, you can see, only lists two. What's the difference? And you can say only provide two contributors, or you can use what we call a coverage. And in this case, the coverage was used, and basically we're trying to provide a percentage. How much contribution was provided by these different products to come up to a certain yield or percentage. And that would list how many contributors are listed. So if you want to see how these work, I'm going to dive into this one right here. When you look at the narrative, it's in a placeholder here, you'll see 3 dots. And when you give that a click, you then have the ability to go into NLG apps, switch to Arria Answers, or create a custom narrative. You can also, of course, copy it. And if this was a custom narrative, you'd see API settings. We have a list or a link to documentation and log out. I'm going to click NLG apps, and I'm going to quickly authenticate so I can prove that I'm somebody who can change this configuration and sign into my account. Now I am authenticated, and I'm going to click on NLG apps to go into the configuration. Right, I am configured, or I'm sorry, authenticated. Now I'm looking at the configuration. Since it's in this small little window, you have the ability to point here and go into focus mode. I want to show you how this thing works. So here is your narrative. These are the 4 values that are listed. So you must have at least one measure and one dimension. So here we see product was detected as a dimension, target sales as a measure, we have market as another dimension, and then actual sales. So those are our 2 measures. Let's scroll up to the top. This is just a 3-step wizard. So this is step 1 of 3. And I'm going to go ahead and click next. Based on the fields that we selected, now I have 2 measures and 2 dimensions. Based on that, you can choose different report types. Here we chose target variance. So what is the measure that or the measures? It is actual sales and target sales. And here is that coverage that we were talking about. 68% basically means show me all of the contributors that contribute up to 68%. If I were to drag this all the way to the right, I would get all of them. If I dragged it to the left, I would get less, meaning only the significant contributors. So that gives you an idea of how it was decided that there were going to be 2 contributors listed here. Here's that other option, entity selection. Just choose top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then if I click next, the last step in here is to choose the verbosity of the report. You can choose a quick summary, important things, or tell me everything, which would actually list all of the contributors. So I'm choosing important things. That seems to be the most popular one. And then when you click generate text, it generates that narrative for you. So that gives you a good feel for how the configuration is done. As you can see, no code. So the code is happening in the background. That's your added value. So these are 3 of the 8 reports. I'm going to go over to the next tab, which is called Describe Charts. This tab is dedicated to 3 narratives that you can build that are really focused in on these type of charts. So here we have a pie chart, a bar chart, and a line chart. And what these do is they provide insight that maybe your dashboard does not reveal easily. So again, we're focusing on a narrative that complements the chart that's above it. So here we have a pie chart, and basically the pie chart, or in this case a donut, really only focuses on one dimension and one measure. So likewise, this narrative will focus on one dimension, which is market, and one measure, cost of goods sold. So you'd see that the actual configuration of this one is quite simple, but nevertheless, the chart focuses or is derived based upon the back-end data. So is the narrative. And of course, if this were connected to live data, your charts would always update, and so would your narrative. Your narrative would always reflect the most current information. Next to that, we have a bar chart, and this is a popular one. This type of chart is measuring actual sales using 2 dimensions, market and product, and really provides analytics for the actual sales and providing analytics for the actual sales using market and product in the actual narrative. The narrative provides details for those main contributors. So the main contributors, as you can see, are departmental, brand store, and online. So as you can see based on the chart, those are the 3 main contributors. So it really complements the chart that's above it based on the back-end data, but nevertheless provides a deeper insight into that data. So this narrative is based on actual sales, focusing on market. Let's say, for example, I wanted to take a look at this, but not focus on market, but actually focus on product. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to click on the 3 dots, and just like before, go into the configuration. I'm going to click NLG Apps and quickly authenticate. I say quickly. There we go. Now I am authenticated, which gives me the ability to go into the configuration. So now I'm going to click on NLG Apps and go into the configuration of it. And again, go into focus mode, just a little bit easier to work with. And as you can see, market was listed first. So all I want to do is I want to change the focus of the narrative. Now, this is one of the ways that you have control over the narrative in a narrative that's no code. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to swap market and product. By listing product first, that provides the emphasis on product. So I can keep clicking next, or I can just click the 3rd dot, going right to that 3rd step. You can see that, did it update automatically? It will. I think it might just be the screen. But you're going to see, let me just make sure that it is by product first. Yep, product is listed first. I'll go ahead to that 3rd step. And I'm going to click generate text. And what it should do is list the product first within the narrative. It's supposed to. Might just be a refresh issue. All right, let me try one more thing. Right now we're focusing on actual sales. Let's say I wanted to focus the entire narrative on profit instead. I'm going to click on the actual sales graph here. You can see that these are the fields that are being used. I'm going to swap out actual sales with profit. So now you can see that it's based on profit and it's listing product first rather than market. Something has happened with that graphic up above. Next, we see a line chart, and a line chart analyzes measures, in our case, profit, over combinations of dimensions, in this case, month and market over time. You can see how the line chart explains profit over the time period, and that's the year selected, 2020. So here are the months broken out, profit over 2020, and the months provided using a time variance analysis that explains the main contributors as well as offsets. So this narrative really does a great job. It then provides a time variance analysis, providing details and those main contributors. Now, if you display the full report, you really see, it does a great job. It then provides correlations. It shows correlations where the profit patterns are similar. So with brand store and departmental, the profit patterns were similar. So this is the kind of expectations you can have with the narrative. Again, no code. All you do is you go into the configuration like we saw before, tell it what you want. And this one was the line chart application. Lots of times people ask, can you change the way this is displayed? So I'm going to click on this narrative over to the right. You can see over here, we're looking at the values that are being used. I'm going to click on the Format tab. And in the Format tab, you have the ability to change the fonts a little bit. So if you're concerned about the amount of real estate this is taking up on your page, here is your font size. So I'm just going to decrease that. So you can see that if you were just putting this in a small area of your dashboard. You can reduce the font, change the colors, and so forth to really accommodate what you want this to do. We're probably in a future version, we'll take a look at the ability to change the actual font. But of course, they're all consistent within here. So right now it's the font size, color, and background.
Hey, Doug, on that also, can you show us how you can make that 13 million number into currency?
Into currency. Well, that would, oh, yes, that would be in the configuration. When we're looking at the actual value for profit, you're going to see an option to display that in US dollars as currency. In fact, we'll do that in the next one because we're going to build one from scratch.
Oh, great.
Okay. Yep. So yeah, you can certainly control how it's displayed. In the next one, and we're going to do that right in this section, we'll build one from scratch. We'll see that option. Well, I'll go over the last two. The last two report types are the new ones. So in version 3.1 of Arria Apps, we introduced these two new chart types. And to me, when I first saw these were a game changer. You know, they really provide some great insight. And the first one is called a trend analysis. When you look at this, okay, you get it. You can see, you know, sales dipped here, rose a little bit, rose substantially, dipped, and rose. But why? You know, that's the underlying information that you want to try to obtain just by looking at this graph. So this is where your narrative shines. The trend analysis will show the main changes in the trend, but also provide those details that you might be looking for. So this is a narrative that highlights significant shifts and drills down through multiple dimensions. For example, an analysis of the changes in sales are measured by month, which is our time dimension, broken down by country, product, and market. So as we click on this, let's see, where's my mouse? Here we go. You can then see the fields that were used. Here is date, is then analyzing profit and market for this narrative. So make sure that you include the correct element of time. So in this case, months, as one of the fields used in your narrative. So there's month over to the right. And then if the value of the measure changes by more than a user-defined threshold over the selected time period, it is considered a trend. Then the user defines this threshold using the trend change percentage option. And that'll of course be in the configuration of it. And of course, consecutive time periods with trends moving in the same direction, like here, are merged into one trend. So May to September, of course, is one trend. Now this is great, and this is focusing on profit by month. Let's say we want to swap out market with product. So this is great because it's showing, you know, it's showing the trend changes, but it's focusing on market. If I wanted to change that from market to product, this narrative is now going to update. And as you can see, it's already focusing on the product. Here's Glauer listed. Just waiting for it to update. So now I'm looking at the same chart, but the trend is now focusing on the products instead of market. So that's how easy it is for your narrative to update and change the focus of the narrative from market to product. I think that's pretty cool. Next to it, we have a ranking analysis app. Now what this one is showing is profit by month and market. So we can see it's for the year 2020. So that's our filter. And it's showing over that year, January through September, which one of these had the highest rank. So here we can see that it's actually departmental. Departmental is the highest. So departmental has remained the top ranked market between January and September with no changes during this period. Instead, let's go ahead and we're going to change this from market to product like we did in the previous one. So I'm going to change this from market to product, and wow. You take a look at this and go, okay, this might require a little explanation. So we'll let Arria do that explanation. I'm going to click on the narrative down below, and change this from market to product. Now the narrative will update, looks to the back-end data, provides that analysis. There we go. And you're going to see that the graph will change dramatically and the narrative explains it. Camoed, which is in green, and Caradian, which is in yellow, were the most frequently top ranked products. So this one does a great job. Now, instead of focusing on the market, we're looking at the product. Camoed and Caradian are the most frequently ranked as the top products in respect to profit. And we're so in each out of 9 months. So with Camoed and Caradian, or when they were not the top ranked, several other products took that position. So that's how easy it is to change your narrative from the market to product. All right. Next, I'm going to go over to this tab, Configure Intelligent Narratives. And in this tab in our showcase file, this is where we're encouraging you to build one from scratch. So that's what we're going to do here. So we see one that's based on profit and products for the year 2020. I haven't really used these slicers yet, but anytime you click on one of these, you can change the time frame that's used. So it's very powerful. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to delete this narrative. So clicking on these 3 dots, I'm going to choose Remove, and let's build a narrative from scratch. So when you get the software, you're going to see this link over to the right, Add Intelligent Narratives for BI. Give it a click. You'll see the placeholder that's created. So I'm going to just line this up. There we go. And resize it and provide a placeholder for our narrative. Okay, looks good. Next, all you have to do is choose your fields. So selecting the fields that you want to be provided in your narrative. It's going to start off with a measure of actual sales. Then we'll choose product and country. And I want to include date, but in specifically year. So what we're going to do is we're going to provide a narrative that does a time variance between 2019 and 20. So I'm going to remove day, month, and quarter. And very important, make sure that I'm not filtered on only 2020. How can I do a time variance with only 1 year based on year? So I'm going to hold down the control key and include 2019. So now I'm ready to go. I'll authenticate real quick. And now you're going to see the configuration screen that you're familiar with. All right. And again, you have the option to make this placeholder point to Arria Answers, a custom narrative, or use NLG apps. So I'm going to choose NLG apps and create a no-code narrative. And let's go into focus mode so we can really see what we're doing. So here are those 4 fields that I selected. Actual sales as a measure, and choose currency displayed using US dollars. So that answers that question from before. So this will automatically ensure that this measure will be displayed in currency using US dollars. And the actual format of that is set within the Studio project that's based in the background. And we expect in a future release, if you want to display the currency using a specified number of decimal places and so forth, that should be a feature coming up soon. But of course, it uses a $ and two decimal places. Next, we see product is a dimension. We'll keep the defaults. Country is a dimension, but I want to indicate that it's a location. And by doing so, it'll use the right language when it refers to it. And then finally, year is a dimension. Go up to next. Now, based on the dimensions and measures that we selected, it's showing you what reports are available. We can't do a target-based variance because I don't have 2 measures. It's only 1 measure. And not really a pie chart because it's not configurable with the fields that I selected. So these are the report types that are available. I'm going to go ahead and choose a time-based variance. We're basing it on actual sales, year over year. So I'm going to change the period to year. So now we have that component configured. We're going to compare actual sales 2019 to 20, so that's year, latest versus previous. Entity selection, we can choose 1 through 5. If I choose 2 here, then it's going to list 2. Now, what's the dimension that's going to use? Product is the first one listed. So this gives you an idea of another component that you can change. You can change the field priority by the way they're listed in your configuration. If I were to choose coverage, then we saw that component earlier. If I drag this to the right, I'm going to get more products listed in my details versus if I went down here, I would get less, only those that contributed the most, the main contributors, where this would give me all contributors. So I'm going to do it around 12 here. And this really provides that ability to control the number of contributors that are in your report. So I'm going to go ahead and click Next so you can see a preview of what it's going to do. I'll choose the verbosity of the report. That is important things. And here we see 1 contributor was used. So this is your opportunity to do that little fine tweaking. I'm going to go back to the previous screen, and I'm going to increase this amount and go to the next screen. And I'm going to expect to see more. So it's refreshing. Now I see 3. So in this case, you're utilizing a coverage percentage. This is really AI taking over in terms of, if we're talking about hundreds of products, it's only going to list those that contribute up to a certain percentage. So just like a sports broadcaster might do the same thing when they're analyzing a basketball game or a football game, that broadcaster is not going to summarize every single player that played in the game. That's ridiculous. Only the contributors that contributed a significant amount to that win would be mentioned. So the same thing here in our business scenario. So that gives you the ability to control the number of contributors by adjusting that threshold in your out-of-box narrative. This is AI determining how many contributors to mention, not all dimensions or some random setting. So I'm going to go ahead and click Generate Text. Our 3 contributors are now listed based upon that coverage setting. I'll go back to Report. There is our narrative that we built, a no-code narrative, just 3 steps, and it walks you through those steps of how to create it. So it's pretty impressive. You then have that ability to do slicing. If I wanted to just focus on one particular country, you could. I'm not going to change the time dimension because this is a time narrative, so it's contrasting 2019 and 20. But keep in mind that ability to change the narrative by using slicers, all those different components that we talked about earlier. In fact, now is a good point to list them. Things you can do to control the narrative itself. You can change the priority of your fields. So we saw that here. Changing that priority would change the priority of how they are listed in your narrative. Choose the narrative type. There are 8 narrative types, and we've now gone through all 8 of them. You can change the verbosity of the report. A simple statement would list everything or just the important things, which, as you can see, is probably the most popular scenario. Choose the important things. Where available, choose that change coverage setting that we just looked at. Change the attribute order. You may have seen, I don't think we did that one, in the descriptive statistics report, there's an option of change the attribute order or let us decide. And when you choose let us decide, that is again a setting, an AI-driven option where it'll list the main contributors only. You can indicate a unique unit of measure. That one's an interesting one too. I'm going to go back to here and go to the first step. And here we see the unit was US dollars. And so the entity type is currency displayed as US dollars. If I were working at a university and I were to calculate or trying to analyze the number of students I have, I could list this as null, so don't choose currency, and then type students here. And then your narrative would actually describe, we had 10 students. And by changing the unit to students, it would use students instead of dollars. So that's another thing you can do to try to control the narrative itself. And then finally, if you want complete control over your narrative, Then you're talking about a custom narrative. And if you talk to your sales representative with Arria, we can connect you with a studio account. You can learn how to build these narratives from scratch. And that's where you really have control over every word that's used. Finally, this tab is used to explore Arria Answers, which is another component of Arria Apps. And this one is the component that really allows you to ask questions in your data. So you can see that all the different narratives that we've looked at provide a good amount of insight. But then when you have questions like why or how, if you ask the right questions, you can then answer that question of why or how. So you can see that in Arria Answers, again, it's looking to that backend data. So if I look here, your questions are going to be analyzing this backend data. And on what fields? Here they are. So these are all the fields that you can use when you ask a question. So we can talk about actual sales, profit, products, markets, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to ask a few questions here. What are my actual sales? You can see that as I start to type actual, that measure is automatically listed. So I'll go ahead and click it, or you can press tab. It'll fill in that field for you. It looks to the backend data, and it calculates my total actual sales were 288 and change. So now I'm going to narrow it down further. What are my actual sales of routine in Canada, one of my dimensions? And you can see it was listed there. Go ahead and click ask. And now you can see overall actual sales for routine in Canada were 5.34 million. Total 288, but now that I'm focusing on a very specific product and a specific location, I'm drilling down. What are my actual sales of routine in a specific time frame in September 2020? You don't have to type the question mark, it's understood. And in that time frame, actual sales for routine were 1.15 million. So it really has that ability to drill down. I'll ask, which product had the highest actual sales in the year 2020? I know this data pretty well. I know it's Caradian. So it's going to analyze the data. In 2020, the top product was Caradian, accounting for, and it tells me the actual value and percentage. So what if I want to drill down into Caradian a little further? What drove actual sales versus target sales for Caradian in a specific location in Canada? It helps to spell correctly. There we go. This one does a really good response. And it will tell me, here we go. Overall, actual sales in Canada for Caradian are higher than target actual sales. It tells you the percentage and what drove that change. So it was driven by brand store, departmental, and channel partners, and even provides an offset, online and chemists. So it really does a good job of explaining those kind of details. You'll note that the answer gives the change in sales when comparing target sales and actual sales. Variance queries must include the words like change or changed, vary or varied, versus or trend. So as long as you include words like that, then it'll provide a variance report. Also note that the answer will always properly state a country name properly. So here we see Canada was listed. It uses variance. In some cases, it may actually describe it as Canadian sales. And it knows to describe Canadian as Canadian. So it knows how to reflect that word properly. It'll know to describe Canada versus the Netherlands. It knows when to put the word the in front of the right countries. It won't always use the same word choice, and Arria NLG purposely uses variation so that repetitive phrases don't sound robotic. Also, if a value is 0%, you can expect the response to use proper phrasing, like there were no values at this time, rather than just returning a value like 0%. Nouns and verbs will always be inflected properly, depending on the measure that's being described. For example, the product was versus the products were. It'll always do that properly based on the measure that's being aggregated. So this is a level of expectation that you can have when you're using Arria NLG. There are some phrases that are derived from data and some phrasing that is simply passed through analytics. But Arria NLG will always conjugate those words properly so that as your data changes, the proper linguistics are used. Finally, I'm going to go to the last tab. This is kind of like our grand finale here. This one does a great job. We called it Explore Custom Narratives. Now, this is a custom narrative that was built, but we do a few things on this tab. One thing is that we have several reports displayed here. This is our sales report. Next is cost of goods sold. If I hold down the control key and click on it, now I'm seeing a completely different report displayed. And then finally, profit. Holding down the control key, I click on it, another report. So keeping in mind that your dashboards have limited real estate, you might want to display a lot of things, but not take up a lot of room on the screen. This is how you can do it. And how that's done, if you know Power BI, you can see that behind these buttons is an action. And here, this is pointing to profit. This one's pointing to cost of goods sold. And this one, of course, is pointing to sales. Actually, it's called main. And in that drop-down menu, we see the list of all those narratives that were in the studio project. So this really does a great job of showing how you can display multiple reports all on the same screen. And this one, if I do a control click to go to it, this one even goes further than that. This one allows me to analyze, so here's my narrative based on product, now by country. So you saw before in those other visualizations and narratives, I would change the configuration and now point to country. Well, this one just uses a drop-down menu. So now I'm going to point to by product and just waiting for that to update. And of course, you can do the last one in that drop-down menu. So keep in mind that these narratives and Arria Answers are really going to shine when you're analyzing your own data. We realize that these are sample data sets that we're looking at here. But when you do this with your own data, you're going to take a step back and say, wow, this is analyzing my data. Couple of other things. What we mentioned earlier, that there are other dashboards that you can use and show off. So here I'm pointing to all those different dashboards. And this is on arria.com/pbi-gallery. So here are our dashboards. And you can view them live. Just click here and you can view those dashboards live and work with them the way I am. Or you can download them and utilize them locally. It's important to note that the true value of your dashboard using an Arria narrative can be shown when you take a look at other types of dashboards. This is a website that lists a lot of dashboards and it's showing them off, beautifully designed dashboards. And they're great. They show KPIs very well. You see the narrative, or I'm sorry, no narrative. You see these dashboards and they're great at displaying KPIs. But do they tell you how? Do they tell you why? That really shows why you might need a narrative. This really shows where Arria NLG fits into your dashboard. They're great at showing all these key performance indicators, but do they go further? Do they show, or do they provide meaning? So now you can see how Arria narratives can help to identify, understand, and communicate insights in your dashboards using a no code required solution. So as technology is trending toward big data and data mining, it's important to note that, or it's important to remember that Arria for Power BI can connect to live data, and then your narratives and Arria Answers would reflect the most current information. So deploying this kind of artificial intelligence to your dashboards will allow your data analysts to focus on more critical tasks. Also remember that Arria will continue to add functionality and new features. So this is now version 3.1, and we're going to continue to add functionality and features as this disruptive technology continues to grow. That's it for me. That's a lot of talking.
Wow, Doug, thanks a lot. That was great. Really appreciate in-depth tour of a lot of that functionality.